Chapter 33, Section 3. So let's take a more in-depth look here at this um, industrial revolution that we're going to be talking about here. It started off as a slow process, but as time goes on, it starts picking up speed. By the time you get to the 1850s, people even realized life around them was changing. So let's go back to the beginning here. So the Industrial Revolution is going to begin in Great Britain in the textile industry, woven cloth. So if you go back to the 16 and 1700s, cloth was made by domestic systems, meaning most of the work was done in a worker's cottage. And raw cotton or wool was brought to each family, and families would use a hand-powered spinning wheel and looms, and then merchants would come to the house and pick up the cloth to sell. Issue is the domestic system can't make enough. Demand was going up. People were living longer. They wanted more, and they got to figure out a quicker way to make cloth. In 1733, a guy by the name of John Kay is going to invent something called the flying shuttle. The flying shuttle mounted on a roller to easily move to each end of the loom. Okay, the flying shuttle was here. It's easier. It's easier for me just to show you this one. This is what the flying shuttle looked like. This is what was invented. Okay, so this is going to cut the time to weave cloth in half. This cuts the time to weave cloth in half. And then in 1764, James Hargreaves is going to invent something called the spinning jenny. And it had a number of spindles fastened to one wheel, meaning one person could spin many threads at once. And so here's kind of how that one worked. Okay, so one wheel, and you had a whole bunch of them attached to this one wheel, so you could spin a whole bunch of threads at once. So things are starting to change as they're trying to figure out how to make more. You got more progress when people realized that they could use the power of falling water to run textile machines. And so machines were starting to be put into place near large water supplies. Factories started being built next to rivers. Okay, and you start seeing like this. You start seeing rivers, and you see these factories popping up. This is the factory system. Workers now, instead of being in their own homes producing goods, would be together in one place producing goods. And towns start popping up around the factories because who wants to travel that far to get to work? But water power didn't work quite as well with heavy machinery. They need another source of power. So in 1769, James Watt is going to perfect the steam engine. And so the steam engine, steam's now a major source of power. All of a sudden, you don't have to build your factory near a river anymore. But the thing is, now that the factories are able to produce more cloth, these textile factories need more raw cotton. Cotton farmers in the U.S. and India couldn't keep up. In 1793, Eli Whitney, with the help of Catherine Littlefield Greene, invented something called the cotton gin. This was a cotton cleaning machine. It cleaned cotton, okay, got rid of the seeds and the husks and stuff like that. It cleaned cotton 50 times faster than by hand. If it was run by water power, it could clean cotton 1,000 times faster. So now we can produce more. But we need to organize all of this. There's a lot being done. So in 1798, Eli Whitney finds a way to organize production, something called interchangeable parts. This is the idea that certain parts of a product are the same size and shape as in another product. So it's first used by Whitney in the making of guns. Up till now, all guns were uniquely handmade. If a part broke and you need another part to replace it, you had to hand make that part. It took a long time to fix something. But now, if everything had this, if all of this one style of gun had the same parts, you break a part, you just get a new part that was already made. You could fix things quicker now. In the late 1700s, Oliver Evans is going to be the first to use something called automation. This is the process where machines, instead of people, do a lot of the labor. He had an automated flour mill. He cuts the number of his employees by 4/5. 1847, Samuel Colt. He's going to use the idea of interchangeable parts to develop the assembly line. Each worker adds a part of the product and passes it to the next worker who puts on their part until we get to the end, everybody's put on their parts, and boom, you have the product. He used it to increase production of the Colt revolver. If you're going to have all of this increase in production, if the Industrial Revolution is going to move along, you're going to need more iron to build machine parts. You're going to need more coal to fire those steam engines. Steel will eventually replace the iron. Eventually, because in the early 1700s, iron making was expensive. They had to use charcoal to smelt iron. Here's a problem, though. Charcoal was a fuel made by burning wood. The British were running out of forests to get much more charcoal. And so how are you going to smelt the iron? So what you end up is with this. In 1753, Henry Bessemer is going to, let me back up. 1753, you're going to find a way to use coal for smelting iron. Iron became cheaper. Iron production grew. Coal mining was huge. Problem is, iron is brittle. Heavy machinery made out of iron, the machinery breaks. 1856, Henry Bessemer found a way to improve the impurities from iron to make steel. Okay? Steel's harder. It's stronger than iron. The Bessemer process lowered the price of making steel. Before the Bessemer process, steel was $200 a ton. After the Bessemer process, it was $4 a ton. 1863, Pierre-Emile Martin and William Siemens, they invented something called the open hearth process. It used a special kind of furnace to make steel. It's going to be even cheaper than the Bessemer process. And it can make lots of different types of steel. Steel centers start popping up all over the place. Mining towns to get more of this coal that they need to heat these things start popping up. But the thing is, we're going to have to improve transportation. If we're going to move all of these raw materials to where they're needed, and we're going to move all of these products that we make to where they're needed, we're going to have to improve transportation, because until the 1700s, horsepower was the chief mode of transportation, and roads were dirt paths. They were slow. If it rained, they were muddy and didn't work real well. But in the late 1700s, the British start improving their road systems. Okay, yeah, muddy. um, Thomas Telford, he designed roadbeds so the water would drain off, and when it turned into that muddy mess you see down there. And then John L. McAdam is going to develop the Macadam Road. It's the Macadam Road. It's a road surface made of layers of crushed stone, meaning horse-drawn carriages could use it in all weather. Didn't matter if it was raining or not. They could travel faster. Britain is also going to begin working on their rivers. They're going to make their rivers even wider and deeper. They would even build canals to connect factories and mining towns. And they would have horses pull barges through these canals. I mean, it's slow, but it would carry 50 times as much goods as a carriage would. By the time you get to 1830, Great Britain had a complete system of waterways. Railroads are going to be a huge improvement. They had been used in the coal mines for years. You would have these donkeys pulling these wooden carts on wood rails. But as iron production grew, the iron rails could now be used to carry heavy loads. And instead of the donkey, what if you used a locomotive and the iron rails? And in 1829, George Stephenson, he won a contest to see who could build the best locomotive. And he built one called the Rocket. It could pull a train 36 miles an hour. But now begins the boom in building railroads. And here's the thing is, railroads didn't just change transportation, it changed daily life too. We're used to it now. We live 6 miles from one. Time zones. Railroads developed time zones. 1883, time zones in the United States. By 1884, time zones in the rest of the world. When it comes to water transportation, the biggest improvement there is going to be the steamboat. 1807, Robert Fulton, he developed the first practical steamboat, the Clermont. It took a trip from Albany to New York City, and it only took 32 hours. Steamboats could now start traveling all over the rivers of inland United States and inland Europe. They don't use it in crossing the Atlantic Ocean, transatlantic. It's not used there till the late 1800s because they needed fuel-efficient engines, because the last thing you wanted to do crossing the Atlantic was run out of power. So things are changing.